you've written a really brilliant article about troubleshooting the manifestation process. So I just wondered if you could say a little bit about, um, what can go wrong and what maybe could be done differently, or how people think about things differently.
Well, the thing that I find particularly fascinating is how people will desire um, something that is in conflict with other desires that they have. The classic one is that they want to eat good food and lose weight. So I mean, you're not gonna lose weight if your focus is on eating as much as you want and really enjoying your meal. If that's your preferred method for losing weight, which is not necessarily a smart thing. But the point is that being really clear about what your desire is and being clear that that desire is consistent with all of who you are, then you can proceed. But until you get to that place, which is a matter of really learning a lot about yourself and really feeling into the deeper drives that you've got. Most of us talk about having some sort of purpose or sense of destiny. But what we're really looking for is what is driving you? What is it that energizes you and motivates you to do things that may or may not make sense in a classic way? So that's number one in terms of a manifestation problem, because if you don't know what you want entirely, or not all of you is on board for that desire, then it's not going to happen. I mean, in order to do this, you need to be very clear about what it is, where you want to go, which then comes to paying attention to what it would look like and feel like if and when your desire is fulfilled. So a lot of people will say, well, I want this, but they don't take the time to, in fact, energize it by visualizing the end result, the product of their manifestation, and enjoying it. And that is one of the key things. Unless you're really going to enjoy what you're trying to manifest, why bother? So, and that's where the energy comes from, is that anticipated enjoyment. I wrote another article that you may want to tie in, and that was "Love It Into Being," because this is the same thing. Until you are really focused on how much you expect to love what it is that you are trying to manifest, you're not going to give it enough energy. Very simple.
I mean, are there any other points that kind of can go wrong with manifestation?
One of the things that a lot of people have trouble with is being okay with actually receiving what it is that they want. That is to say, do I deserve this? Is there something about me that will allow me to actually bring this into my life? And so a lot of this is about self-esteem and confidence. You know Serge's master formula of effectiveness, E, equals motivation, M, times concentration, times confidence, C squared. So E equals MC squared, which sounds like somebody else said something like that, and I don't remember who. But at any rate, it is the confidence, the trust, the expectation that it's going to happen is what's very, very important. I had a girlfriend for many years who did a 40-day program in manifestation over and over again. I ended up doing it for 2 years, and nothing much ever happened because she didn't have the confidence to actually trust that it was going to happen. And that expectation is a key piece. We talk about expectation in a lot of different ways, very often saying, oh, you don't have expectations because you're just going to be disappointed. Well, expectations of other people often lead to that kind of disappointment, although disappointment itself is a choice. But expectations that something good is going to happen works well. An expectation that your desire, your manifestation is going to happen is a key piece, and that's where the confidence comes from, that allows you to have that expectation, and that is what turns the key and makes the whole thing work.
Right. Yeah. Because I've come across that a lot myself, really, with that level of expectation, you know, in terms of people not having that, and it's almost it's getting rid of doubt, and it's trusting as well. There's an element of trust in there.
Well, of course, but don't forget that trust is a choice. Trust is a choice that we make that doesn't necessarily make any sense. That is to say that we can scratch around and look for reasons to trust that what we expect to happen will happen, and very often not find any reason to believe that what we're expecting is going to happen. So we can't rely on logic in that sense to give us what we need in order to trust. The only thing that we've got going for us with trust is that it works. And it works a whole lot better than not trusting. So in order to get the manifestation process underway, we have to trust that it works. And that's the only logic part of it is that you can just test it out and see that it works a lot better than not trusting.
Yeah. I like that. That's a nice metric, isn't it? Really. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. You know, it is a choice, and we're free to make whatever choice based on logic or not based on logic. The choice.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, are there any other things that you think people misunderstand about manifestation or don't get right?
In the Huna that we both operate within, that is the Huna philosophy, which is not by any means the only philosophy that deals with manifestation, of course. But within this one, we talk about things originating in Po, the darkness. But within the Huna system, where we have Ku, the body mind, if you will, Lono, the conscious mind, and Kane, the higher mind, what we're saying is that things start, the manifestation process begins in the higher mind. So the way that I like to approach it is to climb into the higher mind, which is basically a matter of going there like anything else that you want to go somewhere, you know, time travel or understand what somebody else is experiencing. You imagine that place and then decide just to go there, out of intention. Okay, so you intend to be in your higher self. And in that space, you can see your beliefs, you can see where your desires start, and see the process of going from an idea that then gets energized, the emotional stuff, the anticipated pleasure, and watch that process go through the conscious mind, the body mind into physical reality. So being mindful of how this works and the process of it, starting with the higher mind, and that's where the clarity needs to be. But understand that it really comes from deep within you, which is, again, tapping into your sense of purpose or your sense of higher drive, if you will. So you tap into that and then watch the process as it goes through the various stages into the reality. That the reality that is the physical reality is a reflection of what's going on in the higher mind. So to desire something as in either an apple pie or a romantic partner or whatever it is, it's all taking place in the higher mind first. So that's where you want to be clear and work with that higher mind so that you know what it is that you want and then expect it to happen.
Right, but yeah, that's interesting because I guess to a lot of people, maybe outside of some of the kind of esoteric systems, you know, the idea of a higher mind and how you get in touch with that, it, you know, can seem quite an abstract concept, really. And
Okay, but every time you find yourself feeling awe when you look at beauty, say, then you are connected to your higher mind. Every time you are in that witness consciousness, where you're witnessing yourself doing something, that's higher mind. So we charge into our higher mind consciously a lot more often than we think we do. The trick is then to recognize that, hey, this is something somewhat different. I mean, meditation, of course, takes you there as well as does trance, even hypnotism. So you can get there relatively easily. But you want to make sure that you are aware of what you're doing. That is to say, just be conscious of the fact that you are in a place that is different from your conscious mind, and then operate there and understand as much as you can of what it's like to be there. How does that world work? It works differently. It doesn't follow the same rules as the physical world. So there are things that you want to learn how to do there, and skills and laws to operate under that can easily be learned, but it just takes a decision to go explore there. Is that clear?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think going back to what you asked me when we first started this call, you know, how was my morning in the park? I mean, that was just a great example. It's slightly otherworldly, you know, in terms of my normal way of being, and just a beautiful moment.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's, you know, nice sort of connection.
So that puts you into a different state of consciousness.
Oh yeah, totally.
And that is you being conscious of both of basically of everything, of your body, your mind, and your spirit, your inner mind. So that is what we talk about, and as you know, when we join all three of those, we talk about that being Kanaloa, or Kanaloa consciousness, where you can operate and see all of the various parts of who you are, the whole self that is available to you when you relax, calm down, and pay attention to everything that's going on in that moment.
Yeah.
Third, we'll talk about the Kanaloa, or Kanaloa consciousness, as simply being just pure being, the essence of there-ness, now-ness, which is fair enough and jives well with a lot of Eastern philosophies. But so far as I can tell, it ignores the enormous power that we have when we are actively working within that consciousness. As I used the phrase just a moment ago, the whole self, because that to me is what we're all here to do, is to learn all about who all of us is. That's a funny way of saying it, but in any case, that we are, we're much more than our bodies and our minds. And when we say our spirit, most of us don't have a genuine identification with that spirit. What I'm suggesting is that by identifying primarily as spirit, having this human physical experience, then we get to tap into our full power. And power is getting things done. We get the ability to do so much more when we look at ourselves as the spirit, that the conscious mind talks to our spirit and talks to our body. We use that as a way to create in the physical world that which is going on in the higher mind. So by being conscious of all levels, then we get a sense, a more honest and true and deeper sense of who we are.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be very careful to not throw out different concepts. There's way too many concepts out there already around this stuff. And it's very difficult to tell which two are talking about the same thing or talking about something different. So I hesitate to use the terms Kanaloa consciousness or anything like that, because of this problem with all the things that are other ways of saying it. But on the other hand, I don't find many other concepts that really talk about the entirety of our being as one whole self, where we are united in a sense of what's going on. I hear a lot of talk about going into the fifth dimension, for instance. Okay, that's great. And that's having a consciousness or an awareness, if you will, of the higher mind. I have no problem with that. What I don't see, though, is the functional union of that higher mind with everything else, and using that whole self, in this case we call it Kanaloa, to do the things that we want to do and to fulfill those things that we came to this plane to accomplish. And I'm also, in a way, rebelling against the notion that we should be trying to finish up this cycle of life and rebirth and finally get on to something better. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. So I'm not a Buddhist or a Hindu or any of the related kinds of religions like the Sikhs and the Jains. because for me, we're here to live and enjoy this life. Um, and we learn the skills of manipulating energy in order to enjoy our lives more. To me, it's a remarkably simple system that has no value judgment against enjoying your life and creating a reality that really is deeply satisfying. So, what I'm rebelling against both that and a notion that there are some things that are better than others. If something strikes you as being what you want to explore, if it's stamp collecting or collecting cat food cans from around the world, whatever it is, the idea that one thing is better inherently than another also doesn't make sense to me. So what I'm trying to get to is the mechanics of manifestation and let everyone decide for themselves what they want to do with it.
How do you integrate these three aspects? What does that mean? I mean, how would you answer that question?
Well, I think that the that question cannot be answered without a sense of the different functions that they have within the whole self. And unfortunately, we talk about the three selves as though they're acting independently. And unless we are putting our attention on the notion that what we are experiencing in the physical is a reflection of what we are doing inside ourselves, then the whole thing doesn't make any sense. But if we pay attention and we say, okay, I want to have an experience to see what that would be like for my own growth, education, pleasure, whatever you want to say. So I will create a certain set of circumstances that will give me a set of experiences that I then get to evaluate to see whether I like them or not. It's very much like making an omelet and deciding whether you're going to brown the butter first before you pour in the eggs. Okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the whole point is that you are experimenting, and first you have this idea, oh, maybe if I brown the butter, I'll have something that I like better. Well, in the same way, we start out with this idea, okay, I want to have this kind of experience, and then we manifest it and go use all the parts of us, conscious mind and the body mind in particular, and then we get to evaluate how we like it, that oh no or not. So what I'm suggesting here is that the integration of these parts of us is very much a matter of understanding how they all work together and what it is that we're trying to do with these parts. It's also like the body. My brain may say that it wants to eat, or whatever it is, and so it sends all the signals down through my body, and then my muscles get to work and go crack the eggs for the omelet. It's much the same way. You can't really separate the brain from the body any more as you could separate the conscious mind from the body mind or the higher mind. It's just looking at the different functions in the process of manifestation.
You mentioned a couple of times, the notion of purpose. How would you describe, somebody finding out maybe what their purpose is, or whether there's an overall purpose for everybody. How would you approach that?
Sure. The experience of it is as a drive, much like the sex drive. You have drives to be creative, drives, or a drive to express yourself. And it is this kind of drive that is not found with the conscious mind. That's why people get so frustrated trying to find their purpose, because they're using their mind. It's not there. It's in the inner self, the higher mind. And you get that through feeling and being aware of what it is that drives you. Most of that is in what is it that you want? What is it that stimulates you? What gets you excited? What gives you a lot of pleasure? If you're thinking about pleasure and all you ever think about is sex, you're going to run out of the pleasure of sex fairly quickly. I mean, sex for its own sake can get very boring. And without a whole lot of trouble, it can get there fairly easily. So if you're looking for sex in terms of connection to people, or learning how that is one way of connecting or being aware of your connection to lots of different things and people and aspects of the universe, fine. Then you are exploring something that comes from within you that you really want to be doing. And in many ways, it shows up when you've taken everything else away. So you find it in places like the park that you were in this morning. By sitting there and allowing it to show itself and for it to come up, it will do so when you let go of all of the other distractions.
In terms of what you're working on now, then, what's the new book then? What's that going to be?
Well, I feel very strongly that in the midst of all of the spiritual excitement that I see around, at least from my jungle perspective on the internet, but there's lots of interest in various aspects of the spiritual life. But I don't see people being really comfortable with all aspects of their inner self. And that's the trick, is to accept everything, to feel everything, which is a lot more intense than most people that I'm aware of are willing to grapple with. I mean, that intensity is really wild stuff. And if you want to explore the depths of who you are, you need to be prepared for a lot of intensity and get used to it. So it's a matter of, one, learning how to relax into intensity, but not be afraid of it, to go into overwhelm and beyond. Overwhelm is your signal that you've come to the end of your tolerance for intensity. That's all it is. And so you can say, oh, well, all right, let's go beyond that and see what happens. It might be uncomfortable, might be disorienting, but nothing's going to happen to you. And the other piece on that I need to say is that you need to remember that your feelings can't hurt you, but that resisting them can. So it's a matter of being willing to feel and even feel more deeply until what you've been feeling sort of disappears and you're on to the next thing. So what I'm shooting for is to help people just sit with their inner selves, see what's going on, see how it works differently, and to be able to work as well with their inner selves as they do with their bodies and their conscious mind, and so that the whole self can work comfortably and easily. And some of the things that I write about, other people will have written more esoteric or more complete books or articles about some of this stuff. But I don't see anybody putting it all together in a way that can be particularly useful for somebody that wants to really dive all the way into all of who they are. So this means that I, of course, have to know what I'm talking about, which it's an unfortunate prerequisite for writing a good book, I'm sorry to say. But in any case, so I spend time making sure that I do know what I'm talking about, at least from my perspective. Another aspect of this, of course, is that once we understand that we are creating our own reality with our thoughts, our feelings, and our imagination, it then becomes quite apparent that the entirety of our existence, at least our existence on Earth, is subjective. And so learning how to live in a subjective world is something that requires a big shift in consciousness. It's all subjective, personally subjective, and we create things with others, but we're making it all up as we go. Wow, that means that all of the things that we've thought of as real in the objective world are now highly suspect, if not thrown out the window entirely. So I want to make sure that people are comfortable with living in a subjective world, and that's a big challenge right there. So there are a lot of aspects to take into consideration when we say we want to get comfortable with our inner self. I mean, the book's title is Being at Home with Your Inner Self. So the idea is comfort and to be relaxed, which is the key spiritual skill anyway, relaxation. But this is about being relaxed in ways that may not have occurred to people before. I think that covers it for a very short synopsis.
That's a very, very useful synopsis. I think that's really, really useful.
Great to talk to you, Pete.
Yeah.
Take care.
Aloha.